Okay, welcome to the team coaching program. Quick video on training the team in some skills. Because we'll be doing a deeper dive on the skills coming up in the program. I'm Ashley Abbott. I'm on faculty with ACT for the team coaching program, and I'm here with Mike Hutchins as well.
Hey everyone. I'm one of the co-founders of ACT and been supportive of this content in terms of creating it with Ashley and Erin and in partnership with Brown University. So excited to be here.
All right. So we are going to focus on what it's like to train a team that you're working with in some key skills so that the quality of their dialogue improves. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to step into that trainer mode for a moment. Then we'll show you the pattern. Then we'll do a few sample skills just so you see that what we mean by each step. And then you have a document which has all of the skills with some examples and some recommendations in it that you can review on your own time. So let's get started. I'm going to...
Yeah, I'll just add to that, Ashley. You may be thinking, hold on, team coach as a trainer. Absolutely. Specifically when it comes to skill development, there's a lot of value that a team coach can bring when they observe something. And I think that's the key. It's the relevancy of doing this. And actually, a big plug for team coaching is where else do you get to actually train the team in specific skills that they need, and then they go away and practice it with their own work. They're not going on a training course, learning some theory, and then coming back and having to figure out how to apply it. It's like you are right there with the team in the moment, giving them the exact skills they need, and then giving them feedback so that they can integrate that into their team.
And they immediately see the impact of how
immediately see the impacts.
Your team dynamic. Yeah, super. Okay. So here we are in training the team in skills. So here are the 20 skills that we've offered you so far. This is going to seem very similar to a lot of the coaching skill definitions that, and usage that you've seen in your one-on-one coaching, with some twists for a group dynamic. Okay.
Yeah. So should we jump in, Ashley, to the...
Sure. A couple other points I just want to echo here. Some of these skills you'll use yourself, but a lot of them you can train the team in. So just notice that there's that distinction. And we're actually going to add about 6 more skills for you coming up later, which are mostly for the practitioner, but we figure 20 is enough to handle right now. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk just a little bit about what it's like stepping into that trainer mode for momentarily in the context of team coaching. So when you're wanting to help the team adopt a new skill, it's helpful to give them the rationale, clarify why the skill is needed and how it's helpful. So our pattern starts to address that.
Define the skill clearly and deliberately, give examples. So really making sure that you're contextualizing this to the language of the client, meet them where they are, really give some thought to how is this going to land for this specific client? Be really clear and crisp about defining the skill.
And Mike, as you say, how is this going to land for the client? Give some thought as a team coaching practitioner about how this skill might be perceived or handled or received by the culture of this organization. So there's both organizational culture and human culture, right? So from an organizational example might be if you're in, let's say, a very science or engineering based environment, and they expect a lot of rationale for any point you raise. Introducing the skill of bottom lining may be a little bit unusual for them. So you'll need to define how it's going to be helpful to them in their dynamic for them to be able to change their behavior a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Other example might be more culturally. I don't have a specific example in mind at the moment, but it might, some skills might seem a little bit direct or confrontational. For example, naming it. Right, or challenging assumptions, for example. So you might want to, in your explanation of the skill, attend to the fact that you are trying to contest the information or challenge the information that's being presented, not the person that is presenting it. And so just take that into consideration as you're introducing skills. And you may even want to see how they adapt the skill for the best use in their environment.
Yeah. Be agile about when to jump in and jump out. So, it's not like as soon as you hear something, a skill deficiency, you jump in. Maybe just see how that's landing in the level 4. And is this becoming a pattern? But you don't want to leave it too long, but you're like, okay, I'm noticing this is impacting the client in obviating them getting what they want. And so that might be the time when you jump in.
When you do jump in, we want to be concise and actionable, and we have a sort of for all of the steps, but in particular the feedback step, you want to give them a little feedback on how they've used the skill so that they are successful at using it when you're not there.
Yeah. Provide concise and actionable feedback. So really look at the impact that this is having on the level 4, on the dynamics of the team. So, maybe what's shifted, like what are you noticing as improved, now that they're using this skill, and really do this in an enrolling way. Try and bring levity into it as well sometimes. And just try and keep things moving, right? You want to try and keep things moving so you step back out again and then they continue with more confidence in keeping the conversation, the meeting going.
And as our confidence grows, we want to have them integrate that learning with some sort of accountability, if possible, for using the skill after you're gone, right? So, have them express what's useful about the skill and commit to using it in their future meetings or interactions. So, in order to sort of have this work, you might have to rely on the co-created relationship or enhance your co-created relationship so that they expect you to be jumping in, doing a little training, jumping back out, jumping back in, giving a little feedback, and expecting them to make use of this skill. So you want to make sure that your co-created relationship supports that, and that you may be at times, being direct, you may be giving a little feedback, you may be sitting back and taking some notes, just so you set their expectations around that.
This is really going to help you, especially if you're not sure about when to jump in or a bit anxious about doing that. If it's been firmly co-created, then they will be expecting it when it happens, and they know why you're doing it. It's in service of helping the team get what they want. And I think specifically designing about taking notes, people get very anxious when they see someone sitting there, what are they doing here? But sometimes it might be helpful for you to just write a few things down and have that reference if you want when you give that specific feedback.
Yeah. Okay. And once again, as we mentioned a little before, consider how the culture might receive the particular skill and how it might be used to make sure it actually supports the constructive dynamic in the team.
Yeah.
So we've just talked about the mindset of a trainer, and now we thought we'd put it in a 5-step pattern for you, so it's easier to remember, and you can sort of iterate through it when you're interacting with the team in an intervene and empower type session. When you're there, being able to jump in and jump out again, and they're likely focused on a sort of a business topic of their own. So, first step is observing, right? You're sort of in the background. What are you noticing in level 4, the atmosphere or the group dynamic occurring? What is appearing in your intuition? And then find a way to sort of take some notes and ask yourself, what is really needed here? That is going to support their co-created relationship, support the purpose of the team, support the vision and the goals that they're going after.
Step 2, jumping in. So again, you may have co-created. There's a word that you use specifically, so you're not always saying, I'm just going to jump in here, but maybe it is just, okay, we're going to pause for a second. But it needs to be deliberate. It needs to be intentional. It needs to be clear, but it doesn't want to be perceived as being like rude or intrusive. It's a delicate balance that you want to get when you do that. So, if you're sitting with the team, maybe that's easier. If you're sitting away from the team, maybe it's that you stand up. If you're doing it on Zoom or online, just design with like how you're going to go about making that intervention in that moment, and be really clear about what you want to say. Right when you do that, be as objective as you possibly can, and just clearly describe what you observed, and really clear about the impact that's having on the level 4.
Mm-hmm. Mike, I like what you say about, co-create and design with them about how that jumping is going to happen. Sometimes saying a person's name stops it. Sometimes you just say something like, I've got something I'd like to highlight, or I have something I want to offer, right? So they know it's in their service. And then train the skill. I recommend train one skill at a time. Otherwise, it can be overwhelming. Keep it simple for them, right? Because they're holding two things. They're holding the fact you're training them, and they're also holding the thread of the conversation. And they've got points they want to make, right? And questions they want to ask. So you want to explain how this skill is going to be helpful to them. Get a little bit of buy-in. And you might give a quick example or model it, and then you might practice it with them for a moment or two, and then allow them to continue their conversation, being clear that you expect them to use the skill and that you are likely to jump in with a little bit of feedback in about a minute or so about how it went.
We recommend that you do spend time. We'll give you all of the 20 skills and some examples of and some scripts almost of like what you might want to say for each of these skills. We've seen students in the past when they've been doing this, and they'll introduce like, now I'm going to introduce the skill of yes and or one of the skills, and then they kind of fumble a little bit. So it's really like, make sure one, you know, from steps 1 and 2 why you're jumping in, and then secondly, how to introduce that skill and how to train them on it.
Brevity is your friend.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 more steps here. Number 4, jumping out and observe. So I would say everybody likes to jump in. No one is time to jump out. So after being brief and concise and clear, jump out. Take a couple notes on whether and how they've used the skill and what the impact is on the dynamic of the group in total, and also just on the effectiveness of the meeting or moving the conversation forward. Then we move to jumping back in.
Yep. And jumping back in to give feedback. So really underscore what's working, and then just give some examples of like where they could continue to improve. And this is often where the accountability will come in that we talked about, which is, you know, what is it that you're leaving them with to practice between now and when you next have a session with them.
Okay. So we said a lot of things here, and I think what we want to underline here is being light, brief, clear, and one thing at a time. And then this is a pattern that you can roll forward in. You know, you listen then after step 5, you're jumping back out again, and you're back in step 1, listening, observing what's happening in the dynamic and what skill might they need or might be useful next for them.
Yeah.
So we're going to run through just a sample of a few skills to show you how it might sound or what you might be thinking about when you want to train these skills. I'm going to start with accountability here. So something you might hear when you're in step 1, observing, is, oh, well, you know, maybe we could try it out, or, yeah, this is great. So maybe we'll get to it next week or something. So there's a lack of kind of clarity in the action of what's going to happen. And so you might jump in and say, I'm not seeing a commitment to action here, or it feels like you're talking around things. It's not really clear what's going to happen and how and when. Right? So that gives you sort of a platform for the rationale for jumping in and introducing the skill. So then you jump in and say, you know, here's what I'm observing. Feels like it's unclear who's taking the item that needs to be moved forward. I'd like to introduce the skill of accountability. It means creating some clear responsibility for what's going to happen, deliverables, who's doing what, and by when, and how the team is going to know. So it might sound like this. You know, how realistic is it on a scale of 1 to 10 about how this is going to happen? Who will be responsible for getting X accomplished? When is it going to be done by? And how is the team going to know that this is done? Right? Is it in a tool? Is it an email? Is it a Slack message? Right? How are they going to know? And then let's turn it over to you. So we've got an action item. It sounds like on the table. Let's have someone design or create some accountability around it with someone else on the team. So please focus on this skill for the next minute or two. I'll give you a little feedback in a couple of minutes. And then step 4, we jump out. Let's listen for you know, how the action and accountability that gets created around it, how clear it is, what the level of commitment is, and what the language is they're using. And then jump in, and you might say something, okay, I'd like to check in here on, what's clear, what was useful about how that accountability got created. Here's a tweak on what might make it more effective for you. I'd say make the request phrase very short. And then after that feedback is given, you might ask them to say, so, when is the next meeting where accountability is going to be really important? And will you commit to using it in that meeting? You're almost it's getting meta, creating accountability about using the accountability skill, right? Great. And then you jump back out. The cycle is done. You're back in step one again, observing.
So that skill might show up at the end of a meeting in that last sort of 10%, but it could also happen somewhere in the middle. If there's some big action that presents itself that sounds like it's needed for the team, but then you notice people kind of scurrying away from taking accountability, then you might jump in there.
All right, let's move to paraphrasing or paraphrasing.
Okay, so this one is pretty straightforward to observe. I think you can generally sense when teams aren't listening to each other. Maybe they're talking over each other, the conversation's drifting, people have checked out from the meeting because they felt like they weren't seen or heard. And so for you as team coach is to, once you've observed that, jump in and just name it. I'm hearing a lot of talking, I'm hearing a lot of listening, just keep it sort of as neutral as you can. And then go into the skill. I'm going to introduce the skill of paraphrasing. Maybe bring the skill of sensing in as well. It's like the paraphrasing of the words, the sensing is the more the emotion around the words, and so what I typically do, and I use this skill all the time, is like the foundation. If you don't have the listening, really not much else is gonna happen constructively. So, and this can feel, I will say, like people are like, isn't this third grade stuff? It's like, well, actually schools don't teach, well, most schools anyway, don't teach this. I wish they did, do us out of a job. But for the next 5 minutes, so sometimes put a ring fence around it and say, for the next 5 minutes, you earn the right to speak. So you listen to somebody, and then when you have something to say, you play back what they said. And until they nod their head and go, yeah, that was it, then you build on what they just said. And ideally, you incorporate something from what they said into what you say. So it's a co-creation. You're building from each other. And then it just sort of a daisy chain where each person starts building that discipline. And it does work. And when people start seeing that, they're frustrated often at the beginning because they haven't been doing it. But when they start seeing the value in how people come together and feel seen and heard, so then it really takes off. So you jump out, you observe, and jump in again as needed, give them feedback, and oftentimes this is something that they need to continue practicing. But yeah, Ashley, anything to add to that?
No, just that this is, I think, a key skill. And coaches find it natural to do because we practice it all the time.
Right.
But I think it's got a lot of benefit in terms of people feeling they've been heard, information actually getting transmitted correctly, and some respect growing for each other in the team.
Yep.
Okay. Powerful questions, another favorite one of coaches. So I think you're all familiar with powerful questions, but it can really be helpful to help open up dialogue creatively in a team, rather than just try to zigzag back between yeses and nos in order to get at some sort of decision. And a whole bunch of people feel unheard, and a lot of creativity is left on the table. So you might observe that there's trying to get down to a solution too quickly, or the energy is flat, and there's not much participation or engagement in terms of the creating solutions. Or you might be hearing a lot of questions just yes or no, like will we, or should we, or did you, right? Or the only way we will get to is, right? So, and lots of assumptions are being made. So you like to open things up before you narrow things down before an end of a meeting, right? So that you're sort of widening the set of solutions or progress that you're operating from. So when you hear that, you might jump in and you might say something like, "It feels like we've narrowed down pretty quickly, and there might be even better options on the table for you," right? Or play back whatever you've observed in while you were sitting in step one. In step three here, it's just a matter of introducing the question and giving a concise description of it. So here's a powerful question. They are typically short, 5 to 7 words or so. They often start with the words what or how rather than why to get a bunch of justification. They provoke thought. They open up thinking and creativity, right? And they're open-ended, so they don't have a yes or no answer or a one-word factual answer. People have to describe something kind of new. It opens up new territory. So here's an example. What's important here? What's the impact of X? Or what's the impact of not doing Y, right? How could we see this differently? So there are a few examples, and then put it back in our hands. So let's have the next 3 people that speak include a powerful question in what they say. And you can jump out and observe how they do, and then jump back in and give them some tweaks. Like, great, you know, that there are some good, powerful questions there, but you don't have to explain why you're asking the question. How about just get to the question and see what the impact is? This can be another key skill to introduce to teams.
Yeah, this one's I mean, it's an easy one to teach in many ways, and it has a huge impact. People are like, yeah, I get it. Wow, I didn't notice we were doing this. I think there's a strong controlling need for leaders to be like, are we doing this or this? It's like we've defined it, it's this and this. And so often the solution resides either in a bit of both or something else. And so just opening up the conversations just brings up so much more creativity and collaboration. Should we do one more, Ashley?
One more. Let's go to visioning.
Yeah. So visioning is, again, another easy-ish one to do. It sort of gets people out of their heads into a more creative space. So if you notice they're entrenched in siloed thinking, maybe you've got functional expertise in the meeting, you know, finance is this and sales is this and whatever. It's like they're just seeing it down their own silo. And there's no sense of team purpose. You know, there's no context to decisions being made. For example, like the impact that it's going to have on customers, you know, its impact it's going to have on other parts of the organization. They just become in this sort of siloed team. Is to really sort of name that and feels like there's no direction or vision to where this team is aiming for right now. So then what is visioning? You know, you kind of want to have that definition, sort of like imagining a desired future state. And then without getting too much into definitions, then just get into some statements. Like 3 years from now, I see us as, and maybe if you're on Zoom, you put this in the chat, you get everybody to, or if in person, you do it with flip charts or something like that, but get everybody to speak and share and co-create this kind of shared vision of where we think this is going. It's a really good way to get people out of their heads and start collaborating more. Real shift of energy from dissonance to resonance. And sometimes if there's conflict in the team, it sort of assuages that a little bit and it gets people, it's almost like you can see their minds starting to coalesce a little bit more as they can start to see what that future state looks like. And then when you go back to the problem, it's not to say the problem isn't relevant, but they're coming at it with a much better mindset in terms of how to approach that because they've got some momentum and some motivation to go somewhere rather than just being stuck. So you're listening for that resonance in that jumping out, seeing these new ideas get generated, and then you just give them some feedback around how you saw all this happening.
Maybe cultivate an appreciation for how visioning could be more integrated into their future dialogues.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. So they're just a sample of 4 of the 20 skills that you have. You will have an accompanying document that has pages like that has a little bits of descriptions of what it might look like for that skill in this train the team pattern. Two more things I want to just underline here. One is that as you're doing this, everybody in the team is feeling that they've kind of got their objective and your objective. Their objective is the business and the conversation. Your objective is to raise the quality of the dialogue. And so I would say in your co-creation, if you're going to spend some time training them on some skills in their dialogue, then co-create that with them so that they don't end up really frustrated that you keep interrupting them.
Yeah.
You want to say that, you know, they've got some buy-in to spending the time to slow this down a bit, and so that you can train skills. That it's investment now, so things go better later.
Yeah, and I think for me, the final thing here is as you hone your level 4 intuition, it all starts with a level 4. It's like, what am I observing? That's going to inform what skill you introduce. So as you go through the program, as you watch the Frozen Foods videos, as you do the role plays, you know, just asking yourself, what am I seeing right now? What am I noticing right now? And then think about what 3 or 4 skills might, because it may not be one, right? Just give yourself that list in your brain so you can short circuit that and go, yeah, it feels like powerful questions would be a great skill to introduce right now. Feels like visioning would be a great skill to introduce right now. And then in your own time, just figure out, like, how would I introduce visioning? You know, what example would I give for visioning? Get confident, get your words clear around that so you can do it crisply. And then each time you practice and you go around that cycle, you're going to get better and better. And it doesn't take that long, to be honest.
You may also try having a low stakes conversation with this first, right? Like on a more playful topic or a less serious business topic,
Yeah.
with the intent of training some skills. And you may want to just give them a little bit of training for, you know, a half an hour, just focus on some skills, put them in their hands. And then when you're training the team, the pattern, it's more of a reminder rather than a complete new introduction of a skill. So that's another approach you can take, especially for some really critical skills like paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Agreed. And I think final point is when you do your fast project with another with a partner, this is a great one to practice together. You can really practice like how you co-design this, practice introducing it to the other person. They can give you feedback, and that's really going to help.
Okay. So Mike, you promised that that was the last point. I'll honor that. So we're done now. Take a look through the document to look at how the other skills might play out, and maybe choose a couple that you think might be really useful that you want to practice going forward in the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.